All right, so just as a reminder, we did a couple of weeks ago present a good bulk of the functionality for our Estimator 2017 1.0 release, but we didn't quite get through it all. So I wanted to thank everyone for taking the time yet again to take a look at what we had to show. Hopefully you'll like what you see, and as Holly said, please type in your questions, and we'll make time at the end of this to answer as many of them as you can. All right, so what I'd like to do is start out. We left off before we kind of talked about all the new changes when it came to being able to have WBS properties that would stick, assigning costs in the right place, more advanced assemblies and line items. We didn't quite get to the changes for our 2D quantity takeoff integration. So I'd like to start there and talk a little bit about what we've done in 2017 1.0 to improve the experience for 2D quantity takeoff inside of Estimator. What I'm doing now, I just opened up a blank estimate, but this estimate does have some takeoff. So just did a little bit ahead of time before this meeting just so we can have something to talk to. At the highest level, what we did in 2017 1.0 was work very hard to improve the performance of the 2D quantity takeoff inside of Estimator. We got a lot of feedback from our earlier customers who had started working with the integrated takeoff that it was just a little bit too slow, or in some cases a lot of bit too slow. And it was just really, really bulky, and especially when you started to add some takeoff, it would kind of bog down, and just the experience wasn't what it needed to be. So we spent a lot of time kind of reworking all of the algorithms and everything possible to speed that up. Ultimately, we found that there was just no way we were going to get our current platform to get to the place where it needed to be. So we ended up completely rewriting the entire technology system, the entire foundation for our integrated 2D quantity takeoff, adopted a new technology that's going to enable us to not only have the fast performance that we need and that you require, but also allow us to go in new directions where it'll fit our technology roadmap a little bit nicer, incorporating things like OCR, and some fancier bits that you come accustomed to with other takeoff engines and products like Bluebeam. So what I wanted to show first is you can see here, and some of this doesn't come across, so I will say this, because we are presenting on a GoToMeeting, and it is a web meeting, sometimes the movement around is a little choppy just from the meeting itself, but we did create a little bit of a side-by-side video showcasing the performance of 2017 1.0 versus 2016 2.0, and that is on our YouTube channel. So if you haven't had a chance to take a look at that yet, it will at least give you a real feel for the speed that we have now inside of Estimator when it comes to working with 2D drawings. This is working with a PDF natively. It's not converting it to an image. So you can see here that I am able to zoom in and out and pan around in real time. It's not laggy, even with a full set of takeoff in place. I've got walls, count objects, areas. It's not degrading the speed at all. So that was one thing I wanted to show right off the bat. The next thing I wanted to show is a little bit of some of the additions we've added to creating content inside of this new 2D takeoff module. So what we can do here is I'd like to kind of come over and highlight our new Takeoff Palette first. One of the things that you may notice is this is a completely different look and feel for how we integrate or how we interact with our takeoff objects. Previously, we had a much bigger palette at the top of this ribbon, which made it really easy to see the different swatches and kind of what different takeoff items, but it made it very hard to organize and to view your takeoff palette, especially if you had hundreds or thousands of different takeoff objects. You'd see it in what was basically a flat list, just like this one here. But having to scroll through that list to find the things you want is a little bit difficult when you have a very large list of things that you typically pull from when you're doing your takeoff. So we created a new palette object, and in this palette object we enable you to use that same grouping concept that we have in the filter view and other places, like when you apply cost and assemblies, to organize your palette objects as well. So one way you might do that is I'm going to define a group. First, I'm going to break my palette objects down by building type, and then I'm going to break them down by what I call component type. This can have an unlimited number of properties, just like everything else we have. This is going to be built from all of the properties that are available in your your palette objects. So I don't have that many right now, but you can see a handful that I do have, and I've got some properties around building type and component type. So I hit OK, and now my palette will be broken down by first building type and then the component type. So what I'm going to do here is I've got a couple of areas that I haven't done takeoff yet, so I'm going to add some flooring takeoff to these areas. So I'll just expand my floor covering. We'll make these just some VCT. So I'm going to go in here and just quickly sketch just some composite tile. So the sketching is a lot more crisp in this version than it was in the previous version. The hotspots work a lot better. So there's a lot of smaller things that you won't really be able to kind of appreciate until you get in here and actually do a takeoff, but it is dramatically improved from the previous version, and we hope that every subsequent version past this gets better and better on that same rate. So here I've created a takeoff. You'll notice this room is somewhat similar to this guy. It's almost a mirror except for this column block out here. But what I want to do is I'll select this and show you some of the new features that we've got when it comes to working with your 2D takeoff objects. So as I select one or more objects, we have this new context menu here at the bottom. And this context menu allows you to specify a series of commands that you might want to perform based off of what you're currently working on. So like other features inside of Estimator and our other products, we try to infer what types of things it is that you're trying to do and only really limit the selections based off of what you're trying to do, so you don't see a whole bunch of additional pieces that don't have anything to do with a task at hand. So right now I've selected this object and it's given the ability to move. I can now mirror both horizontally and vertically, or I can rotate. So the mirror and rotate are all new commands for the 2017-10. And the move command is improved because now if I just grab this, I have the ability to move my objects very easily. If I want to mirror, so let's say I want to first take and create, I'm going to hit Control-Z and Control-V just to create a copy of my object. It's just a fast way of doing copy and paste. And let's say I want to mirror this. I'll just select mirror. It mirrors my component. Then I can come in and select move and drag it over to the space here. Now it's not an exact fit, so one of the things that I am going to do is just take this point and just drag it over here in the corner so that we have a proper takeoff. But I just wanted to use this as an example to show you some of the new commands we have available in 2017-20 for interacting with your takeoff objects. All right. The next thing I wanted to show, now that we've seen a little bit of the takeoff palette and how we can organize that and some of the sketching commands, is I wanted to highlight a bit of a concept that I got into in the last presentation, which is this ability to tie a formula to a property. So now your properties are no longer just static values. So if I wanted to have a property that's room number and I type in 101, that's great. But what if I wanted to have a property that changed its value based off of other parts of my estimate? So one of the examples I gave in the last presentation was being able to perform a conceptual estimate by tying formulas to the estimate's actual metadata or estimate property data here on the right-hand side. But that concept exists in a lot of places now in the 2017-10 release. So, for example, I'm going to go to my filter tree and I'm going to create a quick filter based off of the component name. And because I don't have, because all I've got here is this 2D takeoff, and I don't have any other objects in 3D or my estimate, it's basically going to give me a nice little breakdown of all of the different components that I've currently drawn. So for those of you who may be new to our software, what this filter tree does is actively filter both the 2D, 3D, and your estimate itself based off of what I select. So if I hit 1 hour wall here, it's going to highlight the 1 hour walls or only show the 1 hour walls. Same with 2 hour walls, carpet tile, ceramic tile, etc. So it's a really nice way of quickly getting to the parts and pieces of your estimate that you want to show. And in this example, what I'm going to do is I'll select the carpet tile. I'll come back to my takeoff. I'll just hit Control-A to select everything. So now I've selected all of the carpet tile on this drawing. And what I want to do is create a handful of properties to sort of showcase this concept of formula-driven properties. First, I'll just create a normal property for this carpet tile. I'm going to call this waste factor. And I'll just give it a property of 0.1. And so all I'm saying here is I'm just building a concept of a waste factor for a carpet tile that just says, hey, 10% of this carpet tile is going to get thrown away. So I've created a property called waste factor. Oops. And now what I'd like to do is create another property, and this one is going to be called number of cases. And what I want to do here is have the carpet itself calculate the number of cases of carpet tile that are going to need to be purchased in this case, so that I can properly quantify my carpet tile in a way that I would buy it. Let's just say that I actually buy the case themselves and I'm not subbing this job out. So here, what I can do is I can say I'm going to take the area of all my carpet and I'm going to multiply that times 1 plus the waste factor. So I can type it in as I'm doing now, or we have the ability to have a formula editor so I can actually double click and bring up all the formulas and functions that you might want to reference as well, which makes it easier. Or this could be straight from Excel and you might already have this data elsewhere and I can just copy and paste it in place. So I'll take the area, I'll multiply it by the waste factor, and then I'm going to divide that by 200. Just hypothetically, let's say a case of carpet tile has 200 square feet of carpet. And then what I want to do is I want to come in and I want to take the ceiling of that. And that's just going to be a function that we have that'll kind of round everything up to make sure we don't get too few cases. And then I'll click this properties formulaic, which will tell Estimator that this is going to be something that's calculated. So I'm going to take and group all these components I have now and then look at my new number of cases property. So it's calculated correctly that the number of cases I'm going to need for my 6,400 square feet of carpet tile is going to be 40 cases. And now if I come and I select, I want to add a line item to this carpet. I look for carpet. And I want to price it per case. I can now take my new number of cases property that's calculating itself and tie it directly to the quantity. So I've got 40 cases, which gives me $36,000 in carpet tile. One other thing before I go too far, that I wanted to show you guys is this concept of those static WBS properties. So it applies here just like it applied in the last version. So here I can say exactly where I'm going to be applying my cost. And I just did one takeoff that didn't have any value, but I'm going to do a takeoff here where I actually provide value for WBS properties for the line items in this carpet. And while I'm at it, what I'll do is come over and let's apply some cost to my 1 hour walls as well. So I'll do the same thing. I filtered quickly on 1 hour wall. I hit Control-A to select everything. And now I'm going to tie an assembly for 1 hour wall to the selected objects in my 2D takeoff. All right, so here I'm just going to map the length of the wall to the length of the objects that I've drawn. So now I have 259 linear feet of wall. This will be tied to the main building, the first floor as well. But I may also want to tie these, just hypothetically, to a second floor. And I'm going to use this here in a second to showcase some of the new advanced copy and paste functionality. So basically what I've done is I've said I've got the same walls on the first and second floor of my main building. All right, we've got a little bit of takeoff now for some carpet tile and for my wall, and showcased a little bit of the formula-driven properties. Before I leave this, I just wanted to say that the formula-driven properties are meant to satisfy basically any needs you might have. So that's the beauty of this type of functionality, is that it's not necessarily to help with quantifying something. It may just be helping react to pricing information or categorizing pieces of information. So you can use this in any way your imagination can think of. One of the ways that I like to think about this is when we first started creating this integrated solution, and we started talking to our early clients, they mentioned that their database was really built around 2D but not 3D. And so obviously what they meant by that was all the quantity formulas they had in their line items and their assemblies needed information like linear and square feet. But it couldn't take advantage of volumes. And the reason why they struggled with adopting 3D quantity takeoff was, and this is just one of many, but one of the reasons why they struggled was because this model only had this concept of 3D data. And it made it really hard to take your database that was built around a 2D concept and apply it to 3D data. Well, one of the things that these calculated properties get you, especially once you've set it up once, as I have here, is it gives you that ability to offload the quantification to the actual 2D and 3D objects themselves. So you can go and you can make your database somewhat agnostic to whether it's 2D or 3D. And in the case of, let's just say, the carpet tile boxes, if I, for some reason, wanted to purchase that per case instead of per square yard or per square feet, I can have it calculate the case here in 2D one way and calculate the case in 3D in a different way. And so let's say I'm covering a slab in 3D and all I've got is volumetric information. I can create a formula inside of my 3D model that'll back out and actually create a per case cost just like I did in my 2D without the database having to worry about how to handle that and without me having to handle two different sets of cost items or change how the quantities handle themselves. So if one client gave me a 2D drawing and another job I got a 3D model, it would give me the ability to react accordingly without having to do anything different in my database. All right, now I'm going to jump over and take a look at some of the formula-driven, the custom calculated cost properties. So just like we did with the properties in the 2D where I was able to give it a formula, you have that same kind of capability with the cost properties themselves on your line items. So before I showed that you can add a column, custom WBS property, and that WBS property can calculate itself. And in the previous presentation, I talked a little bit about how you can incorporate things like waste factor, and the example I gave specifically was around calculating the total labor. So one of the things that's very valuable for a lot of our clients is to figure out exactly the total labor cost for any one item, and they do that by taking the labor price, multiplying it by the quantity to arrive at that total labor cost. So now you can create columns like that if that's a piece of information you want to track. But we also provide the ability to do that same sort of logic on your cost properties themselves. So here I've got a handful of line items that I've added, and what I want to do is highlight a way that you can use this custom calculated cost properties to do something like regionalized pricing. So you can set this up in your database ahead of time, and I could have done that, but I thought I'd show you here in the estimate so you can kind of see exactly how you would do it, even if it was on an estimate basis. This same sort of property, thanks to our copy and paste and interaction with it, can happen in a matter of seconds across your entire database using Data Manager as well. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go, I've selected all of my line items. I'm going to hit Modify Line Item. And what I want to do is I want to go to my labor cost. And I'm going to select my labor cost, and here I'm going to provide a formula. Now, just for brevity's sake, I've actually kind of already thought this formula out a little bit, and I even have it saved. So I'm just going to open up a little bit of a notepad so you can show you what this looks like. So let's go here. All right, we'll cancel out of that. I'm going to paste this here, and basically what this formula is going to do, so instead of typing in an actual value, so I could type in we have no labor cost for all these items, or I could type in that we have a formula-driven value. So instead of having a number, or instead of tying this to a particular crew, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a formula drive the value of my labor costs. And so let me just bring up this formula editor so you can see it a little bit. Oops, sorry, that's the wrong one. So you can see it a little bit clearer. Here I've broken down a couple different zip codes, and I've said if the zip code is the Dallas zip code, use a Dallas multiplier. And if it's a Biloxi zip code, then use a Biloxi multiplier. And all I've done here, Dallas multiplier and Biloxi multiplier, are just variables in my database. So I'm going to switch applications just for a second to show you kind of how you might maintain this, and jump over to the Variables tab. Let me look for anything with the word multiplier. And you can see here I've got a Biloxi multiplier and a Dallas multiplier, and right now they are at 0.9 and 1.15 respectively. So you can change this on the fly, and if this is a multiplier that you want to apply wholesale to something like your labor cost, for example, you can make changes here, and then push those changes down, or really pull them down from the database into your estimate to have that affect your estimate. So that's all this formula is doing here, is just applying a multiplier based off of a zip code. And you'll notice that as soon as I did that, the cost changes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring out my column chooser and show you the labor cost, which was static, but now is being driven by a formula. And right now my zip code is in a Dallas zip code, but if I said it's going to be in this Biloxi zip code, as I make this change, you'll notice that the labor costs modify themselves. And all it's doing is it's putting that 0.9 multiplier on top of the already existing labor price so that it calculates using that new multiplier. And this is just one of probably an unlimited number of ways that you can use this type of features and functionality to really make your your estimates more intelligent. So there's a lot of things you can do with this, but if you wanted to change your pricing based off of total building area, number of keys, number of beds, anything like that, any property of your estimate, any value or any variable in the database, or any logic used in the WBS properties inside of the line item itself, you can now do that. And so it really gives you a lot of flexibility to craft this platform the way that you need it to work for your business. And if I were to give it some other random zip code just to tie this back, it'll go right back into whatever regional kind of a average price that I want it to be. So this would be the base labor rates. All right. So the next thing I want to show you is what we call advanced copy and paste. So I'm going to organize my filter tree by floor and by system. So let's do this. Let's say all those. And I'm going to get rid of the component name just for a second. All right, and so this is going to show you the cost broken down first by the system that they're in, and then by the floor. You'll remember before that the first item I took off had no value in it, so they were both blank. And that was that carpet tile. So what I want to do here is just kind of quickly select these guys and actually give them an appropriate value. So one way that you can do that is to go into the WBS properties. I could select the system. I could say, hey, I messed up. I forgot to put a value in, but they actually need to go to the main building, and they really need to be part of the first floor. So that's one way that you can do it, and now my carpet is in that first floor. Another way that you can handle this, and as a matter of fact, let's bring back in that component type just for a second, so that we can drill right to that carpet in the first floor. And I'll expand the second floor so you can see it just has the 1 hour wall. So here, if I select the carpet line items, and you can see it's a rolled up item, so this actually makes up a series of line items inside of this first floor main building. If I hit, and you won't be able to see this in the presentation, but I'm going to hit Control-C, which is just a standard way of saying copy. And then I'm going to come to floor 2, and I'll show you kind of how this works in a little bit. And I'm going to select here, and I'm going to hit Control-V. And what it does is it automatically invokes the copy line item, except for it fills in automatically all of the WBS properties that it needs to fill in order to properly paste those costs into where I've selected in my filter tree. So you'll notice here, I've selected floor 2. It's setting them all to floor 2. It's part of the main building, so it's going to place them in the main building. And if I hit OK, now those same carpet tiles are part of floor 2, just like they were in floor 1. So you have a way of copying and pasting and moving your cost, or really of applying your cost, very quickly from one section of your estimate to another section of your estimate without having to go in, select those items, hit modify, go over to WBS, select the appropriate WBS properties for those items, and then hit OK. So you can see that it's a lot faster and a lot more intuitive way of working with your cost just by hitting copy, going somewhere in your estimate where you want to place them, and hitting paste. Had I have hit just main building, it would have only applied the main building information to those line items. But because I hit second floor, it applied both the main building as the system and second floor as the floor number to those items. All right, the last thing I wanted to show is I want to reorganize my filter tree. In this case, I want to look at it by CSI. And I want to show a new fee type that we've created that we call custom fees. So here, you have the ability to maybe set a sub bond. So maybe I'll have like an interiors bond. And maybe this bond, we'll come over here and we'll pick this new fee type of custom. And we can give it some value, or we can come in, I'll show you kind of how this works. You can specify a value here or even outside of here. And this has a similar user interface as our distributed fees, except for it behaves a little bit differently. What this fee type allows you to do is it allows you to specify on which items the fee will be calculated. So in this case, I may want to have a 1% fee on everything that's in 09, right? So just like in distributed, I can select here, I can pick from different WBS properties or properties of the line item itself, and I can select value. So here, it works just like distributed. If I were to hit this ellipsis, you'd be able to specify those same exact types of criteria for those of you who are familiar with this user interface. Once I've specified the CSI value, I can come in and I can select, in this case, 09 finishes for my interiors. And while I'm at it, I'll give it a 1% fee. And so now I have a $16,000 fee, which is going to be 1% of my interior prices. So this custom fee, and you can have as much logic as you want. So I can have as many different criteria to apply this fee as I want. You don't have to just pick the one for CSI level 1. And that will make up the bulk of the high-level features that are available in 2017-10. I'd like to now open it up for questions if we have any.
We certainly do. Everyone can just go ahead and submit more questions as they come, but we'll go ahead and get rolling on these. I have one here. Can you turn the auto snap feature off while performing takeoffs?
So it does not turn off. But one thing that I'd like to, especially, so it sounds like the person who's asked us has played with our takeoff version before, and just for everybody else who has not yet used it, it was definitely, I'd say the gravity was a little too strong on the snaps, and so when you would go to sketch something, so if I was going to sketch a new area here, it would pull my cursor, let me zoom in a little bit, it would pull my cursor as I sketched, and I couldn't quite get close to the edge, and so it would snap over, and it would make the lines not do what I wanted it to do, and so as I would sketch, it would start to pull everything away. So there's two things we've done. One, the sensitivity, as you can see, even from this high, is significantly better. So although it does technically have a snap, you'll almost never know it's there unless you just really wanted it. Two, the closer you zoom in, this is the other thing we've done, it makes it much different. So here you can see I still haven't snapped even though I'm inside 3 different circles. It's not until I get right in the center, in this case, that it'll snap. So we did recognize that as an issue, and we did take a lot of steps to address it. So what I would say for those of you who have played with this before, kick the tires on this a little bit. Let us know what you think. If you feel like it's still not where it needs to be, we will certainly make it work the way you want it to. And if we have to turn those snaps off, we will. It's just our preference not to add yet another button or checkbox if we don't have to. If we can just make this work right out of the gate the way it should, with this concept of it should just work without me having to tell it anything new, that's exactly what we want to do.
And then can you save the folder structure of the Takeoff Palette template to use on future estimates?
Yes, you can. Yeah, so anything, I didn't save it before, but here if I wanted to, I have this grouping and I want to take and save this. This will save for use on future estimates. So. And then you'll always have this available here in the drop-down. So when I leave and come back, this should still be here.
Okay, and then we might need some clarifying on this one, but can you combine like item takeoffs, i.e. carpet tile, from different drawing sheets and tie them to the same line item in the estimate cumulative quantity?
So I believe I know what you're asking. There's a couple different ways you can handle this. I will say, though, and this is one piece of functionality that is just being sort of tidied up now, otherwise I would have showed it. Traditionally, we do that through the takeoff summary. And so we have this concept of the takeoff summary that will show you either everything that's visible only, or I can slide this off, and then it'll show me everything that's in all of my drawings. And then you can tie your quantities to, in this case, all carpet tile on all floors from this quantity. That said, we are actually going to have a little bit of a different type of functionality than you may be used to help better support our auto costing that'll be coming up in the future. And the way that that's going to work is if I select, different, in this case, drawing objects, a carpet tile on multiple floors, and I apply a cost, what it will actually do is it will individually apply those costs to each of the carpet tiles. Instead of tying one line item to many different components, it will actually duplicate a large number of items, and then because we already have that roll-up capability inside of our estimate view, it will always appear as one item no matter what you're looking at. So if I look at the fourth floor, I'll see the carpet tile on the fourth floor. If I look at fourth, fifth, and sixth, I'll see carpet tile for fourth, fifth, and sixth, and so it'll always roll up and always show you a nice, concise view of that item.
Okay, and then we have two questions that I do believe are asking the same thing. How do we copy and paste the takeoff from one sheet to another?
So if I have a takeoff here and I want to bring this to a different sheet, one of the pieces of functionality that a lot of people really want to do is if I have a floor 2, for example, and I want to copy and paste this on the floor 2, as soon as I change the sheet, that copy and paste sort of forgets about itself, or the copy buffer technically gets wiped. In this version, it still behaves the same way, but that is something that we have already slated to implement for the next version. The next version, its primary focus is 100% 2D and 3D quantity takeoff. So here we just skimmed the surface. I mean, we did rewrite the underlying technology to make sure that it at least performed the way that you need, but we didn't really dig into hard and heavy all the 2D and 3D quantity takeoff. So that exact piece of functionality will be developed in the immediate next version of Estimator.
Okay. And then can you set properties of a takeoff condition before doing the takeoff?
Yes, you will be able to come in and edit any one of these and edit its properties. Right now, you see all of the user-defined properties for this, so of course I can edit any one of these. There is a bug, and this is one of the reasons why we haven't released yet, is we have a handful of bugs, so we just need to get fixed up first, where it doesn't show all of the properties. That has actually already been fixed. It's just it hasn't made it to my computer yet, but it will show you everything, and you can pre-configure your takeoff items way ahead of drawing them. So in the example before where I calculated the number of cases, that would be likely something I would do here in my takeoff palette, not something I would do after I'd already sketched everything.
Okay, and then can we go straight to the drawing where my takeoff is by selecting filters?
So not yet. That is another feature that is going to be developed in the next immediate version that's focusing on the quantity takeoff. This concept of being able to select a line item or maybe even from a filter jump directly to my takeoff both in 2D and 3D.
Okay, and then how do we print takeoff sheets with legends / quantities, and also if we can print a takeoff summary? So
the print from here with a legend is going to be in the next version that's really focused on the 2D quantity takeoff. But there was some work done in reporting in this version to allow you to have access to the quantity takeoff information. So we do have some capability in our custom reports to kind of report back on what you've already done in your takeoffs. And if you guys want to dig into that a little bit further, maybe we could take that offline and take a look at your specific example to make sure that it'll apply to you as well.
Yeah, we do have two questions around color legends and printing takeoffs. I do think we answered that. Let us know if we didn't. So then we have a question just for someone who's not familiar with our products. Is any structure available when purchasing DESTINI Estimator to allow out-of-the-box use, i.e. CSI filters, uniformat, RS means?
So there is, as a matter of fact, in the database that I showed today, that database comes for free with our applications. As if you want to use it as a starting point, we call it our Advanced Logic database. It does work with Profiler and Estimator. It does have CSI, Master Format 2004, and unit format values pre-coded into the line items, and it has a handful of assemblies as well. So that does come with it. We also, when you do purchase, it's not out of the box per se, but one of the things that we do pride ourselves in is our level of service to our clients. So we strive very, very hard to make sure that we work with you to make sure that your database is set up the way that you want it to work, based off the way that your company and your team works. And so we have teams of people whose sole responsibility is to come in and help you implement the software. So it may not be out of the box, but it is something that before we let you go completely, we're going to leave you with a database and a series of reports that are going to work for you.
And then regarding 2D takeoff, has any thought been given to utilizing the vector information from PDFs to speed up takeoff?
Absolutely, yeah. So that's one of the things this new technology allowed us to have access to. We don't take advantage of it yet, just based off of time. It is something we are going to explore and hopefully implement in the next version. We will certainly implement it, if it's not in the next version, in one of the following ones. That said, we are not only working with our own proprietary system here, we're also working with Autodesk, who already has this type of thing implemented, and we have made some pretty strong headway into implementing their 2D takeoff around BIM 360. So you will also see that as another alternative. If you don't want to use ours, you'll have access to a cloud-based solution as well, which already takes advantage of that. So one of the things that we do get asked a lot is around the release date. Like, when are we going to finally see this 2017 1.0 version released? We are obviously having a lot of hurdles come up left and right, and we're trying to jump those as much as possible and make sure that we release a good product. We've stopped creating new functionality. We're in what we call our bug fixing phase, and we're about to enter what we call our release candidate phase, which will have our alpha and beta testing. We expect to be into alpha right at the first of the year, and that should leave, and please don't quote me on this, obviously things happen, but it should give us about 4 to 6 weeks of continued testing time afterwards to wrap everything up and have it shipped out. So I would expect it to be sometime in either late January or early February of next year.
Thank you, Mike. And then we actually do have a few more questions around the drawings. Can you see the scale that has been set to each drawing and select from a list of standard scales?
So you cannot in this version. That 100% will be implemented in the next version. That one has been requested many times. It is extremely valuable and handy, and we will certainly have it in the 2017 2.0 version.
And then how can we add and load multiple drawings at the same time?
So right now, everything is, open up model, load model. In this case, I had to go to my drawings and select. But it is all single select. So if you want to open multiple at a time, you have to go in, open one, go in, open the next one. So I think functionality like that would fit squarely in the 2017 2.0 feature set. We're really focusing on enabling you to do quantity takeoff in a way that gives you the time and performance and quality that you need.
Okay, and then as far as questions, I do think that's it, so we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. I want to thank Michael Boren for showing us this remaining functionality, and we will hopefully get the recording out to you today. Thank you so much for attending, and thanks, Mike, for presenting.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate your time today. Thank you.